Animal Adventures, Chapter 5, Texas Longhorns. One spring evening, Laura and Pa were sitting on the doorstep. The moon shone over the dark prairie. Pa was softly playing his fiddle when Laura heard a strange sound in the distance. "What's that?" she said. Pa listened. "Cattle, by George," he said. "Must be the cattle herds going north to Fort Dodge." The next morning, Laura saw two strange men sitting on horses by the stable. They were talking to Pa. The men were brown from the sun, and their eyes were narrow slits between squinting eyelids. They wore flaps of leather over their legs, handkerchiefs knotted around their necks, and wide-brimmed hats. "So long," they said to Pa. "Hi-yip," they said to their horses, and they galloped away. "Here's a piece of luck," Pa told Ma. Those men were cowboys. They wanted Pa to help them herd their cattle past the creek bluffs. Pa wouldn't charge them any money, but, "How would you like a good piece of beef?" he asked Ma. "Oh, Charles," said Ma. Her eyes shone. They never had beef to eat, just prairie hen and jackrabbit. Pa tied a big handkerchief around his neck. He showed Laura how he would pull it over his mouth and nose to keep the dust out. Then he rode away on his horse to join the cowboys. All that day, Laura and Mary could hear the sound of the cattle herds coming nearer. It was a faint, mournful sound of cattle mooing. At noon, dust was blowing along the horizon. Ma said that all those cattle trampled the grasses flat and stirred up a cloud of dust. At sunset, Pa came riding home covered with dust. There was dust in his beard and dust in his hair and dust puffing off his clothes. He did not bring any beef because the cattle weren't across the creek yet. That night, Pa went to bed soon after supper. Laura lay awake, listening to the cowboys singing away out on the prairie. Their songs were high, lonely, wailing songs, almost like wolves howling. Laura could hear the cattle mooing softly, and sometimes real wolves howled far, far away. But mostly she heard the cowboys' songs rising and falling and wailing away. When everyone else was asleep, Laura crept to the window. She could see 3 fires gleaming like red eyes way out on the prairie. The sky was big and still and full of moonlight. The lonely songs seemed to be crying for the moon. They made Laura's throat ache. All the next day, Laura and Mary watched toward the west. They could hear the faraway bawling of the cattle. They could see the dust blowing. Suddenly, a dozen cattle appeared on the prairie not far from the stable. They had long, sharp horns. Their tails stood up and their feet pounded the ground. A cowboy on a spotted horse galloped madly to get in front of them. He waved his big hat and yelled sharp, high yells. "Hi! Yay! Hi!" yelled the cowboy. The cattle turned, clashing their long horns together. They galloped away, tails held high. The cowboy's horse raced after them, herding them together. They all went over a rise of ground and down out of sight. Laura ran back and forth, waving her sunbonnet. "Hi, ya," she yelled, until Ma told her to stop. Laura wished she could be a cowboy. Late that afternoon, 3 riders came out of the west. A lone cow came with them. One of the riders with Pa on Patty. Slowly they came nearer, and soon Laura could see a little spotted calf alongside the cow. The cow mooed loudly, and the little calf bleated. 2 cowboys held ropes tied around the cow's horns. They rode up to the stable and held the ropes while Pa tied up the cow to the stable wall. Then the cowboys said goodbye and rode away. A cow? Ma could not believe it. Now they could have milk to drink. The calf was too small to travel, Pa said, and the cow would be too thin to sell. So the cowboys had given them to Pa. There was also a big chunk of beef tied to Pa's saddle. Pa and Ma and Mary and Laura and even baby Carrie laughed for joy. Pa's laugh was like great bells of ringing. Ma's smile made Laura feel warm all over. "Give me the bucket, Caroline," said Pa. He was going to milk the cow right away. He took the bucket and squatted by the cow, and that cow hunched herself and kicked Pa flat on his face. Pa jumped up. His face was blazing red and his eyes snapped blue sparks. "Now, by the great horn spoon, I'll milk her," he said. He got his axe and he sharpened 2 thick slabs of oak. He pushed the cow against the stable and drove the slabs deep into the ground beside her. The cow bawled and the little calf squalled. Pa tied the poles firmly to the post to make a fence. Now the cow could not move forward or backward or sideways, but the little calf could nudge its way between its mother and the stable. Then it felt safe and stopped its squalling. It stood on that side of the cow and drank its supper, and Pa put his hand through the fence and milked from the other side. He got a tin cup almost full of milk. "We'll try again in the morning," he said. "The poor thing's as wild as a deer, but we'll gentle her. We'll gentle her." Mary and Laura took Pa to give the cup of milk to baby Carrie. They watched her drink it. The tin cup hid Carrie's small face, but Laura could see gulps of milk going down her throat. Gulp by gulp, Carrie swallowed all that good milk. Then she licked the foam from her lips and laughed. For dinner that night, there were sizzling beef steaks. Nothing had ever tasted so good as that tough, juicy beef. Everyone was happy because now there would be milk for all of them to drink, and maybe even butter for their cornbread. The lowing of the cattle herds was far away again. Across the prairie floated the cowboys' songs, almost too faint to be heard.